Welcome to Minor Specialty, a podcast for nurses who want a clearer view of what's possible in this profession. Real nurses, real stories, and real possibilities. Today, I have a guest. She is a flight nurse, and so I'm so excited to talk with her today. Her name is Stephanie Suzadail, and she has been doing flight nursing for, I believe she said 8 years. Is that correct?
Very
Okay.
close, almost. Yeah,
Okay.
short.
And so I'm going to let her introduce herself to start because I want to get into this. So go ahead, Stephanie. Tell us all about what you do.
Oh, well, thank you. So I'm Stephanie. As you heard, I've been a flight nurse for just under 8 years, EMS for pushing about 18 years, and nursing for about 12. So you can kind of see that there's a little bit of a gap between when I started being a nurse and when I started being a flight nurse. But that was always my goal, and I absolutely love what I do.
Okay, so you said it was always your goal. So when you started to be a nurse because you were an EMT first, you
Yes,
knew
ma'am.
that was your goal.
Yeah. Interesting enough, I love emergency medicine. I went into being an EMT because a boy broke my heart in high school, and the logical thing is we all go Elle Woods it, and do all the things that we want to do and make ourselves better. But I just love emergency medicine, and when you look at career potential, nursing obviously is going to have a little bit more leeway than any of your EMS specialties are going to. So it gives this blend of EMS, yes, but also nursing.
So what's interesting is you you came into your career with strategy because a lot of times the goal for nurses is to become the nurse, right? You become the nurse
Right.
and then that is your end goal and then that's where you kind of really start deciding where to go. But you
Mhm.
came in completely with a strategy of being in the emergency field and then saying, no, my goal is to be a flight nurse.
Correct. I mean, there was a brief period, which I think we all go through during peds, where you're like, could I be a peds nurse? Eh. But no, yeah, I always loved I mean, I started before I even went to nursing school, I was in paramedic school. But like I said, with just the career potential, I swapped over to nursing before I finished. So it just seemed always logical. But in the back of my mind, I knew what the steps were to becoming a flight nurse, and I tried to align my career trajectory in such a manner that I hit all of those things.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. That is actually, why I kind of started this podcast is I wanted nurses to start thinking early, like, where do you want to go?
Hmm.
Don't wait till you graduate. Start thinking about where you want to go and strategically start getting that direction, even in your rotation, where you're getting the opportunity to see the directions that you want to go. And so tell us a little bit about your day. How does that work and your schedule? Because I know when you and I talked before, we were talking about your unique schedule and how that isn't the same for all flight nurses.
No, not at all. So actually, flight nursing is one of those things where it can be aligned with a hospital system where you work similar shifts to a hospital nurse, or you can be in community-based models, which are more traditionally your 24 to 48-hour models. It kind of just varies of where you are and what system you're working through. But with my system, I work for a big corporation that covers nationally. And one of the things that they do is they staff hard to fill areas, so very, very rural areas. And in order to do that, what they do is they have what's called travel flight nursing. And in this particular schedule, I only work 2 weeks every month, and then I have 2 weeks off once I've finished. So my company brings me out to this area. I work 24 hours on, 24 hours off for the next 2 weeks. Although knowing me, I always pick up and end up doing like 36s or I'm doing outreach. So my days off very infrequently are actually days off out there. But then when I do these shifts, I finish up and then I fly home. And then basically, the 2 week vacation you always have to put in for like a year in advance. I have that every single month because of the way my work schedule is. So my day basically begins like everyone else's. The alarm goes off and I immediately want a cup of coffee. My base from my off duty housing, which is what the company provides, is approximately like a 35-40 minute drive, depending. So it gives me that kind of warm up period to kind of just start thinking about my day, listen to my podcasts. And when I get there, we generally try to get to our base very early. And the reason is you obviously don't want your coworkers getting stuck on a transport. Now, we always try to get in early at the hospital too, because like you want to get turnover, you want to look at your patients, but it's different in the transport environment because they could be gone for another 4 to 6 hours, depending if you don't get there in time. So I try to get there early. And one of the very first things we do is obviously we check our aircraft. So we would go through, I make sure all of my oxygen cylinders are full. I make sure I have all of the pumps are all charged, my ventilator is charged, my cardiac monitor has all of the accoutrements it needs for me to be able to run vital signs. And then I go in and we do narcotic exchange. So we have a Pyxis at the base. That's not traditional for everyone across the board. But what we do is in flight, we often have a secured OtterBox that we are both like accounted for. And this changes of what's in it from area to area. So we do that. We exchange it with the off-going crew, and so we do narcotic exchange. Obviously, because since we're not having a Pyxis out in the field with us, we have to be very careful and account for every ml of every drug we carry. And what we carry in this box varies from state to state, area to area. We also happen to carry blood. We carry 1 unit of whole, and most places will either carry 1 unit of whole or they'll carry component therapy. So they'll carry red blood cells, plasma, and then be able to administer that in flight for your trauma patients. So we check to make sure that's good. We check all of our dates, just like you would do a nurse to nurse check on blood. We do that almost every morning just to make sure that that's good. And then we wait. So I either have all of those assigned online trainings like we have to do in the hospital. I have skills I have to validate every couple months. So we'll have educators come and do that with us. Or I have meetings, lots of meetings. Teams did not go away when I left the hospital. And I'm also an outreach coordinator. So in my downtime, I am planning classes for the community, planning classes with our partner organizations like Bayer, EMS, hospitals, to help get them Con Ed at no cost to them. Or we're planning blood drives. We're doing just kind of any kind of outreach events for the community to help educate them on health matters. So health fairs, how billing works with the No Surprises Act, and so on and so forth. Otherwise, I some days will watch everything on Netflix and do nothing all day otherwise, or I will not see a lunch, a bathroom, or a bed for 12, 13 hours at a clip. It all depends.
So it definitely like no day to day is the same. You just don't know. You come into your shift and
Mhm,
then if they're not, I guess from what I'm understanding is if there isn't a flight that you're on at that moment, then you're doing
mhm.
everything that you can to make sure you're ready.
Yep, so we make sure we're ready. This is a great time to do all those like regulatory things like our OSHA trainings and all that. It's a great time to do it, so I don't wait to the last minute. Although I have been known to wait to the last minute. Uh, oh, that ladder safety. Oh, everyone loves ladder safety. But yeah, so if I'm not actively out on an interfacility transport, which is going from one hospital to another to try to help get them resources that may not be available at hospital one, or my base is very, very big on scene calls, which means that generally fire EMS will come to our base because we have a pad there, and will bring their patient to us, and then we'll fly them to a tertiary center, like for strokes, semis, traumas, peds, L&D.
Oh, okay. So the kind of patients that you get, because I understand too that things are changing in the flight world,
Hmm.
on the kind of
Yes.
patients that you have and who you actually are transporting.
Correct. So when I first started as a flight nurse, just about 8 years ago, it was before COVID. And back then, I feel like it was a lot more difficult to get in a flight. Generally speaking, the regulations now are they want you to have at least 3 years of critical care experience, whether it be ICU or ER, or a transport company before coming into flight. But back when I first started, it wasn't uncommon for you to have 5, 10, 15 years because it was so competitive and there wasn't a lot of jobs for this. After COVID, we're seeing increases in transports between hospitals. We're seeing staffing crises across the country, especially in our rural areas. So, these patients aren't getting the same care maybe that they could have gotten before because there just isn't staff or resources like there used to be. So, for instance, maybe one rural facility lost their interventional cardiologist. So now they all have to go, hours away. And the best way to do that that is by air. So now we may be seeing these critical patients, which I can tell you my last hitch, I flew critical patients like every day. And it's our slow season, so that's saying something. But sometimes it's not always a matter of people needing critical care as much as they need critical access. So they don't need to go fast, they just need to go far.
Mm.
And especially with these rural areas that don't have a ton of EMS or ambulances that they can spare, one trip away from their coverage area could take an ambulance away for up to 4 to 6 hours. So that's one less resource in these communities.
So that's interesting in that, the rural areas, because I know like some other positions that work in the rural areas and nurses driving their cars and for hours
Hmm.
sometimes just to get to a certain location. And so that makes sense that you guys are using now the helicopters to do some of
Hmm.
this transport and get to the patients and then move them to different areas if need be. And it sounds like a lot of public health that you're doing as well with all that outreach.
Hmm. So yeah, I mean, let me just put it this way. Health or when you have flight nurses in general, flight medicine, flight medics, the flight companies don't want to see you. We don't. So one of the biggest things, just like trauma centers, is prevention. So how can we help, prevent things? How can we provide education? What resources can we help make connections to? In training less specialized types of care in early interventions and whatnot, we can hopefully reduce what we need to do in the helicopter later. So if they're more aggressive in the moment when they make patient contact, well, that's all the better outcomes that you'll
Yeah.
have later on.
Okay. And I think like we're also talking like access to care in general because
Oh, yes.
um sometimes like if you're in a not a rural area, the access to care I've timed in different areas that I've worked that are outside of the hospital, what the time is from calling 911 for actually getting emergency help on site. And it's
Hmm.
like 6 to 10 minutes. But when you're
Right.
in a rural area, that isn't the case. And so the
Correct.
people that are there first, your first responders, are the ones that are giving any kind of treatment until you arrive. But at least you're arriving a lot quicker than somebody would be if they were waiting for
Exactly.
the hospital to or somebody to send out the emergency services.
Actually, yeah, exactly. So, like I was saying with where I work, some ambulances, if they have to go far, they're gone for 4 to 6 hours. So they move up the next ambulance and they post in somewhere else just so that they're ready to reduce their response time. So response times where I work can sometimes vary between 20 minutes or it can be 40 to 50 minutes to first contact. And that's why a lot of the fire departments in my area too often will they beat out EMS almost every time because they don't have to have the big trucks. They're not transporting. They're still in their first due. They need those skills to have early interventions in order to help maximize outcomes for these patients. Just because it does take so long. Now, I also run as a volunteer EMT in my area, and I will say, like, I live in a little bit of a small city, big suburban area, and our response times is generally we're out the door in 4 minutes. Most contacts with patients are less than 10 minutes, except for like the very very far reaches of our coverage area, and that's not what these patients can expect in these rural areas where you're waiting for an ambulance. The ambulance is maybe coming from somewhere very, very far away. So you may only have fire crews who often are taught up to paramedic level care, but then they have no transport. So they're kind of stuck in one area for these prolonged periods of time. And this is where becomes interesting with flight because we actually can obtain what's called a first responder status. And sometimes we don't need fire or EMS to be there for us to land. Now, there are specialized helicopters that have to undergo certain training and regulations for all this, but they can actually just land right in somebody's yard, in somebody, well, I say yard, but their property.
Yeah.
Um,
They probably
there's no
have
real
lots of
yards in the desert.
lot
Yeah.
of acreage.
So there are special helicopters that can go out and do that and make this first contact. And that really is helping increase patient outcomes because, again, you're getting to higher levels of care faster.
I love that your role, how you're always thinking increasing patient outcomes and how we can make that better. And that's probably some of those meetings that you're on that you talked about when you're in meetings. It's probably those kind of discussions that you have. And the prevention is, we know that that's really where we want to be. I mean, we, would, as even though it's your job, we would, as nurses prefer not to have to go and you know,
Right.
get those outcomes where we want them to be and keep you stabilized until you can get to an area that has everything that you need.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you, I love doing high speed procedures. I love very, very sick patients, very, very injured patients. I wanna be there when it happens. I don't want it to happen, you know what I mean? But to
Right.
the same token, like, I also don't wanna do all that charting. It is so much charting. But, like, we don't want to have to do that for people. We can, but that aspect of outreach and prevention is huge, in the flight and transport community, of going out and helping people understand, like, here's how you do hands only CPR, here's stop the bleed training, for our partners, here's some early interventions, and here, let's train these skills that you guys may not be doing often, so that when you have to do them, you can do them quickly, efficiently, and safely.
Yes. So I think we kind of talked through, but maybe because I'm just kind of looking at challenges and rewards of what you do, but we talked a little bit about them. But what would you say is the challenges of working as a flight nurse?
I want to say, self-care is probably one of the hardest things for flight nurses. I mean, we don't see people on their best day. A lot of, any EMS, sometimes even L&D, ER, like there are nurses who do not see people on their best day. But generally speaking, when we're starting to be called, it's because these patients exceed the resources of where they are. So you can go into a hospital, and even though they've been in an ER under physician care and had certain treatments, they are now like, they need higher, they need more, they need fast, and you will not always win in that case. At this point, we are optimizing the outcomes for these patients, but we don't always win. So having good self-care and making sure you're getting good sleep, you have a good system. You actually step away from work when work is, when you're off the clock, which is very, very hard for me to say. This is a lesson that took me years to learn because I defined myself as a flight nurse. So it was my identity, and some days it still is. But kind of separating who you are as a person and in your job as a whole, I think is one of the hardest things for flight nurses. I mean, we often take a pay cut when we come to flight, which is wild to think because we have so much more responsibility. Our protocol scopes are way wider, and we're required to be able to take care of, like, what my previous employer would say is wound to tomb. So generally obstetrical patients all the way up to 100 plus. So that's a very wide population that we're responsible for, but you're taking a pay cut for it. So you're really coming into this job because of the love of the job. Um, Basically how cool the job is. Like, sometimes I joke that flight providers are paid in cool flight suits and helicopter selfies, but just making sure that it doesn't become your identity, and making sure you take care of yourself and that you process those hard calls, because as many wins as we get, sometimes we get as many losses. The goal is to not have that, but that was probably the hardest thing for me, especially during COVID, where a great deal of my patients that I transported here on the East Coast did not survive either the transport, the packaging process before we even get out to the helicopter, or not long after delivering them to the tertiary care center. So, just learning to take care of yourself, recognizing, doing those internal kind of checks, like, how am I doing? Do I need to use my PTO? Yes, use your PTO. But mental health matters, and the conversation is becoming better, but I still think it's not quite there yet.
Right. It is getting better. It's kind of brought up a lot on a lot of my podcast interviews as well, that, we really need to do self-care and also do our mental health. I kind of like your schedule that you're 2 weeks and 2 weeks because you can maybe really disconnect, it's also like the schedule where a nurse who comes home for the day and then takes it home. And
Mhm.
learning that disconnect at whatever time the shift ends until you go back, and then the couple days off that you have if you're doing 12-hour shifts. So maybe a little nicer with your schedule, but not everyone has that schedule either when they're in flight nursing.
Right. And I kind of want to say yes or no, even with my schedule. My schedule, if I get held over at work, I could often be working a 25, 26-hour, 27-hour shift, if depending if I'm out on a late flight. So that leaves me less than 24 hours to kind of work on my sleep deficit, because we all know that, you get yourself into this big deficit and it takes days to dig yourself out. Making sure that I optimize getting sunlight, getting out, getting some exercise, and that I don't just come home and come back to the apartment and crash on the couch. But another interesting thing with about how my schedule works is the first couple days of me being home for that 2 weeks, I am useless. I have changed 3 time zones. So now I'm still kind of on an Arizona time zone. So it's getting close to noon and I've slept in on the West Coast, but with a still kind of a reasonable time. So it's interesting with that, with the time zone changes. Now, prior to this schedule, I worked 12-hour shifts. I was in a hospital-based system, and we worked 12 hours with rotation every other weekend. So at that point, they didn't have like a fully, I don't know if they do now, but they didn't have like a set, like you work, I don't know, 4 days and 2 nights, or you work 3 days on this week and 3 nights on the next. There was no set schedule. So trying to, maximize your sleep and well-being, bouncing back and forth between days and nights, it was very, very hard, especially when you're out in not just a hospital where I would work nights. At least I was in a consistent environment. Uh, in the summers, it was very hot. So, I'd be sweating to death at night. Or in the wintertime, when it starts getting into the 0 degrees, you get more fatigued by this constant shifting in the environment that you're being exposed to. And never mind the fact that helicopters themselves, because of the natural vibration and everything, cause fatigue. There's a reason they have those vibrating plates. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
I was
it's
going to talk a
exhausting. It
little.
does do something.
Yeah, I was going to talk a little bit about the helicopter because, yeah, I've personally never been in a helicopter, but I am
You'll have to come
married to
get a ride with
someone.
me.
I am married to someone who goes in a helicopter quite a bit too for his profession, and talks about sometimes that helicopter sickness. And
Hmm.
so I have friends too who love boats and go on the water, and I have specifically told them, I am your land girl. And so we can do anything on the land. Don't invite me on the boat or anything. And it's probably,
Uh-huh.
I do go on plane rides. I don't have any problems with that. But from the way I hear helicopter sicknesses, that's a little different, huh?
Yeah, very much so. It's you don't want to go to work if you've had dental work done because of the barometer changes when you go up in altitude. So, if you have a sinus infection, it's a bad day. And our helicopters generally don't go high enough that we need to pressurize them. So we'll stay anywhere from like 500 feet to maybe 6,500, 7,000 if you're really pushing it. So, you get these like changes. Not only that, but you get the temperature changes depending on where you're going from surface to land. You're getting the hypoxia because the air is thinner when you start going up. So it's not uncommon to think that, okay, I'm transporting a patient at 5,000 feet. Well, now I myself am mildly hypoxic the entire time. If you're out and you're exhausted and you haven't eaten, you can be more susceptible to being distracted or being nauseous. The wind going over certain mountains and hills, or if there's like you're out like, yeah, I guess on the West Coast, like the Santa Ana winds that'll batter you around. So I mean, just those little things. Or if it's hot and the sun is out, just make sure you don't look up at the rotor disc, because you can actually give people seizures from that flickering. It's wild.
Wow, yeah, those are a lot of things to think about that, a nurse can think, oh, that sounds so cool. I want to do it. But, probably that might need to be taken into consideration.
I wouldn't recommend it for people who are easily motion sick or scared of heights. I have people who want to do this job but are scared of heights. I'm like,
We know we go up, right?
maybe. They do have ground transport, you can do ground
Yeah.
transport.
So, yeah, let's talk about who this is good for, what nurse this would be good for, and how would a nurse go about starting the strategic road into becoming a flight nurse?
So I want to preface this by saying there is a minimum requirement, but minimally uh, qualified does not mean truly qualified. So I want to stipulate by being careful with this. So most companies will fall under an accreditation system called KEAMST, and basically they set like standards on how many years the medics should have, how many years the nurses should have, what training, so on and so forth. It's a safety rigor. It's like a rigorous safety program. So most programs will want you to have at least 3 years of 3 to 4 of critical care. And they define critical care as ICU, PICU, NICU, or ER. And I want to make sure that I specify there are other types of transport programs. There are high risk OB programs where some L&Ds will have their own flight team. Certain NICUs will have their own flight team. And that's very specialized. Like that, we do what's called team shipping, where we give them the helicopter, they send the people, and then they go do the thing. Um, so there is a variety of different flight nursing. But generally speaking, you have to have a critical care stop non-negotiable if you're a nurse. If you're a medic, it's 3 years of busy 911. Additionally, they want you to already come certified. So show that you have mastered your field. So if you're an ER nurse, they want you to have the CEN. If you're an ICU nurse, they want you to have the CCRN, and so on and so forth for all those fields. And this just shows that you have mastered what you need to know in that particular thing. Um, Not only does the certification just show that you've mastered the basics, it shows that you have what it takes to follow through, because you will need to go on and get additional certifications to fly. There is the CFRN or the CTRN. Basically very, very similar test. Actually, I write for both because they are so similar, but one has flight physiology in it and one does not have as much flight physiology. So being able to show that you can follow through with these particular commitments. And then there's the alphabet courses. So, your ACLS, your PALS, your BLS, your NRP, NOP, your QRS. Um, so all of the alphabet classes, and this varies from agency to agency, which ones they want you to have. If you're a ship that does nothing but, neopeds, you may not need to have adult or trauma. They may just want you to have like what you need for that. It varies also system by system and state by state. Um, when I flew in Pennsylvania, I also had to have a certification called the Pre-Hospital Registered Nurse. Essentially, this is a Pennsylvania Department of Health qualification that puts you in the ladder with EMTs, paramedics, us, pre-hospital physician extenders like your PAs and your NPs and physicians. So we had this whole tier of things that we had to have for that before you could even become a flight nurse in Pennsylvania. Whereas other states, they may just want you to have an RN and have a couple trauma classes or something like that. So it just really depends. And the best way I can recommend to find those out is to actually look at job postings, because they will list out exactly what you need. So if you're thinking like, okay, I want to in a couple of years become a flight nurse, we'll go out and look at the postings. Look at your area, like just type in I don't know, Idaho flight nurse, Louisiana flight nurse, flight jobs in this state, this county, and they'll give you a list of like all of the different agencies. And another really great way to do it is just reach out to those agencies. Say, hey, I'm a nursing student. Hey, I'm a 2-year ICU nurse. I'm looking to become an ICU, or I'm looking to become a flight nurse. Can you tell me what steps your people traditionally take? And not only does that create networking opportunities, but it helps you kind of make sure that you're getting everything that you need. Now, you had asked what kind of person I feel like should go into this field. People that are, let me just say, type B plus A minus, because you are never going to have things as neat and tidy and beautiful and perfect as you will in an ER, or excuse me, an ICU. And it'll just be slightly above an ER nurse. So you really have to have flexibility. You have to learn that sometimes good enough is good enough. You are not going to have perfectly labeled lines. You are not going to have a beautiful central line for your leave fed. Sometimes you need to be okay with a 20 in the hand. And that just makes people very squirrely. But also the ability to prioritize. Okay, so I need to do this first, and then this. And if I do this, I should have this. So if you're able to prioritize, critically think, and really be proactive on what your patients will need down the line, those are the kind of people that really thrive. I also like to add in, you should come a little chaotic, because no day is the same. You're going to see a lot of weird stuff. You're going to work with really, you're going to have to be able to work with doctors who don't agree with you, nurses who want to be you but are scared of you, firefighters who will add you on Facebook before you even land. So you work with all kinds of personalities. So having that ability to be flexible and empathetic. So understand where these people are coming from. If you are the type of nurse to go, why didn't you do this? This is not the field for you. Do not. We don't want you. Because there is very good reasons why people don't do that. They don't have the capability. They don't have it in their protocols. Like the agencies I work with, they are not allowed to rapid sequence intubate. They can only intubate if the patient is in cardiac arrest. So if you are the type of person that is who finds yourself questioning, why did you not do these things, rather than become curiously like, what was it that impeded you from doing these things? We really don't want those kind of people, because these people trust us to come in. Our These facilities, these first responders are trusting us to come in, take these people somewhere, help them, and then help get them the best outcomes. So nobody wants to feel like they did a bad job. So
Mhm.
the people that I recommend coming curious, but do not come condescending.
Yeah, now that is, you put a really good picture of the nurse who would be good here. Because you're right, we are taught in nursing, this is it, this is the way it is, don't deviate. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes that's not possible in some of these roles, and
Mm-mm.
this role in particular. So that's good to know that, as a nurse, you have to be curious. You can ask, we say, ask questions. Don't,
Yes.
don't start thinking, oh my gosh, they did that wrong. I don't like this because they break
Right.
rules, etc. Ask the questions. Why did you do this? Can you tell me, rather than maybe saying, why did you do this? But can you tell me why this is the way it went? And just let them explain so that you know.
What did you see that led you to do this, or what were you seeing that led you to not do this? Because even still, think about when we have patients that we transfer from nurse to nurse. Who best knows that patient? The one who had them most of the time, unless it's shift change. But I mean, the person who had spent the most time with this patient knows more than you're going to know in that moment. And let's just say, when you're in those transition periods, things get missed because you're like, okay, I need to tell them this is what the car wreck looked like. This is what we did so far. But they may forget a detail that may matter, because they're so overwhelmed with the picture that they're trying to paint,
Mhm.
that they may miss something. So in inquiring, what was your thought process? What was the reason this perhaps thing was that we didn't do it at this time? Oh, I forgot to mention the patient has a Tylenol allergy. Ah, thank you. That is very good to know. So, just things like that. Come curious, but don't come higher than thou. We are not the end all be all. We are still susceptible to making mistakes, and I still learn things day to day. And let me just put it this way: perhaps if I don't agree with the treatment plan that has been completed up until this point, or it does not fall in the way that our protocols would do it, hey, you know what? You guys did a great job. I appreciate what you offered. And then you do the next thing in the helicopter, but you don't make people feel belittled about their care. Or you
Right.
explain why you are going to be doing something.
Yeah, and you work as a team, it sounds like,
Hmm.
very much so, and rely on each other. And so being, of course, respectful to each other as a team, and, being curious. Now, do you guys allow like nurses to come in and shadow at all on any flights?
Absolutely,
Oh, yay.
absolutely. So, depending on the agency and where you're located, a lot of them will do what's called ride-along programs. So, if you are looking to become a flight nurse, you can reach out to your area flight programs and see if that's what they're doing. If they aren't, somebody else may. At least as part of an outreach coordinator, that is another thing that I help do. If there are EMTs, firefighters, paramedics, future potential flight nurses, students, anybody who just wants to understand the care continuum and what we do and why what they do first matters. Like, we'll do ride-alongs, weather permitting, weight permitting. Like, a lot of places do have weight restrictions, and if the patient weighs too much, sometimes you will get left behind. But it's
Yeah.
still a really great experience to come and you get to talk to the critical care crew. So why do you guys do it this way? And can you teach me this? And we love that stuff.
Oh, good. Okay, so that's good to know, because I'm sure, there's no way I would like say I want to be a flight nurse without actually going on a ride along.
Before you ever accept a flight position, get out on a ride along, because you don't know what you don't know. And I would hate to see people leave a very, very comfortable, well paying in hospital job. Yeah, come into flight. It's not what I thought. I can't do the in and out of the weather, because let's be honest, pre-hospital care or inter-hospital care is difficult on the body. Some people don't realize how much we have to lift, how cold it gets, how hot it gets. Right now where I work, somebody just sent me a Snapchat, said it was 115 degrees. I'm like, oh, I am so excited to go back and wear Nomex. So understanding like that you have the ability, not just the smarts, not just the experience, but the ability to be a flight nurse is really crucial. So any really good program should not buck you if you're getting an offer, going through the interview process, and you ask, hey, may I do a ride along so I can, see what you guys, what your capabilities are, see what they do, how the day goes, and so on and so forth before you make that jump into this career.
Yeah, and so, and even students that are thinking about it, they're in school and, that's kind of the area they want to go. And I would say that you would have to do more than one flight ride along because, uh,
More than likely.
yeah, I have a personal story where I went into the OR and part of the application process was to do, a shadow in the OR. And so I did one very easy surgery. And, I said, oh, yeah, no, this is definitely, what I want to do.
Hmm.
And, then comes all those challenges of standing and,
Yeah.
the longer ones and everything that had to go with it. And I'm like, I
Hmm.
like this as much as I thought. I mean, the surgery I was in only like 2 hours. And
And
so,
it's funny you say that because, like, I told you how I had a brief period where I wanted to go into peds until I did peds clinicals.
yeah, so I think
You don't know
shadowing,
what you don't
yeah,
know.
you don't know, that's true. And so shadowing is so important. And sometimes I'm not sure that every area allows it, but if they say no, go find another place that does because they are allowed.
Right.
And I think if you're really looking at something that's going to be taking a lot of certifications and a lot of steps to get to where you are, you definitely need to do some of that shadowing.
Right. And I mean, especially when you think about, well, what is flight agencies are either one of two things: hospital based in big cities where traffic becomes an impediment to patients going from one place to another. So you may hear of flight services that only do 5 or 15 minute hops just because of the traffic situation. So in like Phoenix, Arizona, it's very, very like it's huge, but like the traffic is such an impediment. So you'll see really complex cases, maybe only have 5 to 15 minute flights versus where I am, where one leg of a flight could be 50 minutes to 70 minutes. You really want to make sure that you have that ability to be in those rigorous environments, and then maybe not getting a lunch. So this is where I also recommend reach out to your local EMS providers and get some experience there too. Like ask if you can do a ride along and shadow, because one, you'll see kind of what it's like to work with less resources. And I think every ER nurse, by the way, low key, should go out and do a ride along with EMS, because you don't understand what you do in EMS until you've been out in EMS and the circumstances and the operational aspects. It's not just medicine. So if you want to be a flight nurse or you want to even be a ground critical care transport nurse, get out in ambulances. See what it's like to have to work in an environment that shakes, that has no room, that has poor lighting, has no hands. Like, because it is very taxing when you have everything going wrong and you have to intubate the patient, you have to stabilize their blood pressure, you have to start blood, you have to, I don't know, splint something down the line, consider cefazolin for their open wound, and then try to package them into a helicopter with like six dudes near running rotors in an area that is probably no bigger than like a handicap porta potty. So you got to have a lot of, that's a lot of stamina and that's a lot of stress, and you have to be able to know that you can do it. So by seeing, it's the best way to expose you to it.
Yeah, I like that. And I even like that,
Mm.
being an ER nurse to go out there and do the ride-alongs as well.
Mhm.
Even if you're in school and,
Yeah.
or if even if you're on med surge or even starting anywhere, we have a lot of nurses that right now they're just taking the job that they can get. And sometimes it's
I
not the
know.
one that they
Yeah.
thought. And but that's why strategy right now is so important. So if part of your strategy can be starting to do those ride-alongs and then if like, especially if you want to be an ER nurse or, and starting that
Mhm.
stepping stone to where you're at, I would do some of those ride-alongs and put that on my resume
Absolutely.
and speak to it in my interview that, I've been on ride-alongs and,
Mhm.
I've been on the ground with them and getting the transport over to the ER and I really want to be in the ER. That's going to give you the strategy to get into the areas that you want. And so go do those.
100%. And I'm going to even raise you a little further. Um, this is empowering to a med surge nurse as well. Think about how helpless it feels sometimes at night when your patient needs to be rapid response or is a code and you feel so helpless. when you have exposure to the EMS systems, you learn how to do more with less, and at least you learn how to prioritize, and you have confidence. That is why I feel like EMS was, for me as a flight nurse, being an EMT before I ever became a nurse, helped me infinitely. Become a better flight nurse because I knew already what it was like to have to deal with the operational aspect to it, the lack of resource, but then also I felt calm and confident because I've dealt with more using less.
Right, right. I actually trained in a area that it was a county hospital. We didn't have anything.
Yeah.
So we made things work, and it was a luxury when I went to another hospital and I was like, "Oh, wow. What is this?" It's actually
No,
a
and
name.
it's funny because I feel like some of the best transport nurses I've ever met weren't the ones from big academic centers, weren't the ones from big trauma centers. Those centers have more resources than anybody. When you really want are the real critical access ones, and they're the ones holding the patients for how long and doing more with less. Those are the ones that really have always impressed me. Those small, like critical access, critical care areas, just because they did not have the luxury of residents. They didn't have the luxury of maybe even a physician there physically. They had to have like a tele ICU, or they had to call the physicians.
Right, right. There's a lot of areas of nursing that, you're going to be doing some independent judgment and you have to feel
Hmm.
comfortable in those areas. So, lots to look at. Well, we talked about a lot of things. Did we say, like, I can tell that you love it. And, but tell me a reward that you have for being in this area.
Oh my gosh, where can I start? I have made some of the best friends I've ever made because of not only my coworkers, but the hospitals I serve, the firefighters that I work with, the EMS professionals. I have had more opportunities to do the coolest things. Like, oh my gosh, I was able to get to actually see the Goodyear blimp because it landed at the airport. I've just like silly things. I've gotten to climb on top of Black Hawk helicopters because they landed at the airport. I've gotten to do things that are at the top of and in excess of what I would ever be able to do as a nurse. So I've intubated patients. I have done like surgical procedures on patients because it's in our protocols. Um, Chest tubes. I have been able to do all kinds of drugs. I have been trusted with an autonomy that I would never have been able to get anywhere else. I can make my decisions on what meds I want to use and why. Yes, we have protocols, but often, as long as you can justify something, you can do it. So I get to do real cool high speed medicine. I get to do it in a helicopter with some of the best office views in the world. I have had opportunities galore. And the thing is, our field is constantly evolving. So I have to learn something new like every couple months. So I have to learn about a new thing, a new procedure, a new tool. I did an impella transport a couple months ago, and that was cool because I hadn't actually like physically ever been on a unit with one. So I got to do that with like 10 drips in a small helicopter. So, you get to work at the top of your license. You get to do amazing things. You get to do it in a helicopter. My schedule is so cool. I love my schedule. Um, but I just think your the outcomes are one of the best things. So one of the best things for me has always been following up with my patients that have had good outcomes. Even the ones that have not had good outcomes, it's nice to catch up with their families and be like, hey, you know what? You gave them the best chance you could. I rested a little better knowing that you did more than they could have had where they were from. They had the best chance that they were ever going to have. And some people just rest more comfortably knowing that. And then
Yeah.
walking into these facilities where, I laugh because there's memes and reels online about when the flight crew comes in, and they're just like, "I'm sorry, this wasn't done," and the flight crew's like, "Don't worry about it, it's cool." And I love being that person where I can be like, "It's cool, I got it. Don't worry about it. You had a 6 patient assignment. I get it. I'm here. We have 2 people to 1 patient. Like we have better like." I love being that person. I love being that sigh of relief for these people that we're relieving the patient from and the
Yeah,
cool
yeah. You
outcomes.
just brought up a memory of mine. I mean, I actually kind of forgot about it, but I actually remember going up and on the roof and meeting the transport team at the helipad, and I was happy to see him. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, I used to be so scared. I was so scared as a new grad giving report to the flight teams, and they were just like, "It's all right." And I'm like,
Yeah,
"I'm so
yeah.
sorry.
It's
I
very
don't know
nice
what the
to
blood
hear.
sugar
Right.
is."
Okay, good. Yeah.
But
Because you just
yeah, no,
never
I mean,
know. You never know what you're gonna
uh-huh.
get when, you're passing something off like, oh my gosh, I should have done this and that. But you guys being reassuring and, calming and
Right.
we're here, we got this. We're used to getting
Right.
the patient at any level and we're ready.
And my gosh, what a weird feeling it was when I went from my ER into flight, and I would service the same ER, work there still per diem as an ER nurse and come in as a flight nurse to bring patients, take patients, do that thing. And man, how strange it was to see the interactions with the providers, versus when I was in scrubs versus when I was in a flight suit. I feel
Mhm.
like when I was in scrubs, a lot of times, I'm like, can I please have more pain medicine? Can I please have all this? Whereas when I would come in a flight suit, I'm like, hey, I'm gonna give him more pain medicine.
Yeah.
It's like
See what you got. Right.
there's an aspect of trust that obviously had to be earned over a very long time. But man, that what whiplash to like go in on my weekend job and be like, can I? No. Oh, okay. I can't do that here.
Yeah. Well, and you are involved in so many things. Is there anything else that you want to say? Because I know that you help people that ask you too, like, how do I get here? And real quick before we move forward, you mentioned like a regulating board that decides what nurses and doctors and what they need to have. What'd you say the name of that was?
This one is called CAMPS. It is the oh accreditation of air medical transport S. But
Oh, okay. Okay. You
essentially,
said it really fast, and so I'm like, oh, just want to make sure I write down what that is
yeah.
because
So
that accreditation.
it it's a voluntary accreditation for many of these. So some states require it of their air medical services. It helps with insurance reimbursements. It helps build culture. Like they look at the safety, they look at the aviation, they look at the medicine. It helps build like a rigorous system versus just, I have a helicopter and we're just tossing them in. I got whatever in my bag, but I'm just doing my own thing. This is what sets those kind of things apart to being like a high quality service. So this particular thing, it's CAAMTS. I cannot remember what it stands for. I just know it's CAMST. But we go through an accreditation every couple years.
Okay, good, good. And then so what else do you want to say to the nurses who want to go here or thinking about it or how they look into it because of all the other things that you do and that you're involved in? What can you share?
Some advice I have for people that are looking to maybe get into this field is leverage your social networks. I would not be where I am if I hadn't made some of the contacts that I had made. I got in a little earlier than some. Back in the day when I first started flying because I had the right context. I had was doing a internship with a coroner's office at that time for my master's degree, and he happened to fly, which I feel is a conflict of interest if you don't get what I'm saying. But no, I'm just joking, just joking. Sorry, that was terrible. Um, but leverage your networks because these people know if they are not themselves in that network, they may know someone who is. Don't be afraid to reach out and I know it's not always a good thing, but cold call people. Like reach out on LinkedIn, be like, hey, I have questions for you. I see that you have this on your LinkedIn. What can you say about this? Or do you have recommendations for these kind of things? Talk to your instructors of these different classes because they often teach all the disciplines, so they may have contacts in certain places. um, Another thing is get involved in your professional organizations. ENA has been amazing for me. The contacts that I've made through ENA, ASNA, the Air and Surface Transport Nursing Association, like get involved in these things. Not only for the sake of increasing our policy development around nursing, but just to make these contacts to get good education. And they always are like sending out things of like, here's this event or this event, and just going and doing that networking at those events, so like conferences or mixers or what have you. So people are a resource and use them. The worst they're going to say is I can't really help you,
Hmm.
but there's no harm in trying.
No,
But
for sure. You're speaking my language because that's exactly what I say. I
I'm a
say
huge networker.
right, then the networking, that's what I say. That's most of the jobs that people are getting. The nurses are from a friend, someone they knew, someone that thought about
Hmm.
them. I talk a lot about the organizations, especially because students can get student discounts. And
Exactly.
it's also another window of seeing if that's really where you want to go. Because at
Right.
those places, at the conferences, they have all these speakers that speak about different subjects in that area of specialty.
Hmm.
And if it doesn't excite you, like if you're in that room and you're rolling your eyes and you're like, oh no, who cares? Then that's probably not the specialty for you. But if you're
Yeah.
in the room and you're listening to someone speak on something and you were
Hmm.
just fascinated by it and thinking,
Hmm.
wow, that's really amazing. That is cool. Then that's something to pay attention to. And so in trying to really find where you best fit in this, in as being a nurse, it's just giving you another window, another glimpse when you go to those organizations and, become part of
Yes.
those. And then it also gives you the absolute way to network and meet
Oh,
people.
100%. Those conferences, like those speakers, a lot of times are industry leaders. They are the ones that are on these boards. They are the ones that are in special interest groups. Like I met people through the EMS advisory committee for ENA. Uh, it was amazing. So Alan Wolf is like my hero in the flight world, and to meet him through conferences was phenomenal. And now he's my mentor. Like he when I write questions for the board exams, he's the one who looks through them and gives me the yay or nay. So take advantage of these people. I mean, they are there because they are open. They want to share what they know. And often, if they don't know the answer, they'll find somebody who does. So the flight industry at large is incredibly small versus all the other nursing specialties. Everybody knows everybody.
Yeah, I think I find that with a lot of specialties as well now that they're just a small world. And even if you just meet them once and you get their name and shake their hand, you can look them up on LinkedIn, see what kind of content they're
Right.
putting out, and then ask questions. I know people ask me questions all the time, and people were just happy to answer. So I
Mhm.
think that's really good advice. And definitely, getting into areas that are highly specialized and where people, nurses have no idea. I mean, nursing school, we're not talking, if you say anything about flight nursing, what are you saying? You're saying, well, or you could be a flight nurse. You're not saying, do this, do that, do this, do that. And, go here and check and see if it's something you want to do. And all the steps that you're taking being strategic, but at the same time, deciding if that's where you want to go. So
Right.
there's different things that you can do. So that's great that we're talking about that.
Yeah. Big fan of networking. I mean, social media, I hate to say this, but when I first started flying, my coworkers were not a fan of social media. I was the youngest, pretty much one of the youngest and the only one of the only females in my area. So, they were like, oh, it's trivial, like selfies, so on and so forth. And I'm like, it's a little more than that. I was one of the very early flight influencers. Flight influencers.
Yeah.
And I just started by sharing my love of the job and how excited I was. And it's interesting because people were like, "Oh, I didn't know that was an option. How did you get into it? Like, what did you do?" So the power of social media, when used and levied in a professional manner, can really help you make these connections with people who are otherwise completely unobtainable. Like you couldn't, if you weren't at the conferences, if you weren't in their groups, you may not have ever met them, but now they are a couple clicks away if you have a question. I mean, the worst they're going to do is probably ignore you if they get like 30,000 messages. But, you shoot your shot. What's the worst they're going to happen? Either nothing or no.
Right, exactly. Very good advice. And I found you on social media. And so I think
Exactly.
I'm always looking for nurses who especially love what they're doing because, we hear so much about things that aren't so good out there. And, finding your passion within nursing is just gold. And so, we're here for it. Hopefully that this gave people, nurses, a glimpse of, or future nurses of an area to go into. And even if it isn't the area, you can take this into any direction, shadow anywhere, go to those
Hmm.
conferences in the area you're thinking, but make
Hmm.
the moves while you're in school too, or
Hmm.
early in the career, because you don't want to, what I call, have the career by accident. And that is because you got in the door because it was the one hiring, right? And you
Right.
never moved out, you stayed there. Because find something that lights you up and you have passion for. And if it's flight nursing, then we just gave you some good steps of what to do.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I really like the idea of starting early in school. When I worked for another flight company, I was saying about how I wanted to do like talks for students, and one of the things I was met with from leadership is, well, that's not really a recruiting demographic. Well, that's not a good thought to have. Yes, you have to come with experience, but if you start these people early, they can get into the places that you're going to want them to be in, rather than, oh, I've been in this particular specialty, but it doesn't count toward my flight time. Now I'm set back a year in my mind from where I want to be. So,
Right.
I mean, I especially love talking to students because if you start early and start aggressive, like they can bang out all these requirements real early. And if they start dual specializing early, like that's amazing to me.
Yeah, that's amazing. That is, and yeah, that is definitely what we want to do. You want to go back to when you're like in school and and people are saying, okay, what are the roles? What do you want to be when you grow up? Well, what are the ones that we always hear, right? Doctor, lawyer, right? The traditional roles, right?
Firefighter,
Right,
veterinarian.
nurse, and then, but it's not, now you're a nurse or you're going to be a nurse. What kind of nurse do you want to be? And
Oh,
so
there's flavors.
yeah, so we're opening up that door of all the possibilities that are out there. And
Yeah.
so it's been so wonderful talking with you. Tell us how people can reach you.
Well, mostly the easiest way is to reach me through Instagram. I am at pyrovixie. It is it's spelled exactly like it sounds. I also have a blog that I talk about flight nursing, coming into flight nursing, as well as some funny parts about flight nursing. You can reach me there at scrubsnsirens.com. But yeah, usually just easiest way is get me through Instagram. I'm also on LinkedIn.
Okay, cool. Well, I am definitely going to put all that information on the show notes. And I know that you are happy to help people. And I so loved having you on the show. Thank you so much, Stephanie.
Thank you, Rebecca.
I hope what you heard today gave you real insight into this specialty and helped you see what's possible for your nursing path. Please subscribe so you don't miss what's next. And tell me, what specialty should we feature next? If you're a nurse in a unique specialty that you'd love to share, apply to be a guest on my website. I'm Coach Rebecca. Until next time, keep exploring.